Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Today is our ninth episode of Life, Love, and Lipidemia. Well, we've heard it all. We've heard all these things that our colleagues are saying. We've heard all these things that our friends are saying. In fact, at night after work, when we go out for dinner, we talk about it, we bitch about it, we moan about it. Today, we are going to really discuss it, but this time, now it's going to be out in the open. So, welcome to the ninth episode. Hello, everybody. If you can hear me, if you can see me, just say hi in the chat so we know that you're there and we know who's on. Okay, today I have two special guests with me. I have Jasmine and I have Doreen. So let me just very briefly introduce them. Jasmine has been my classmate. We've been classmates since what? So we've known each other for what, 14 years already?
Yes, 14 years ago.
So young.
Yeah. Since those times in NUS Pharmacy, Jasmine and I, and if you remember from episode 3, Raymond, we've always been in the society room, thinking about life after pharmacy, thinking about our jobs, thinking about our work. So, Jasmine, welcome. Let's just tell everyone a little bit about your work and yourself.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm not sure if you know me. Most of you probably have seen me beside Sean before. Sean has gold hair now, then I start having gold hair. He had gold hair when he was in school. So basically a bit more about myself. So now Sean has revealed my age. I was a pharmacist at the polyclinics for 5 years. And after that, I went on to MOH. So if you know the collaborative prescribing piece where pharmacists have prescribing rights, that was the piece that I was working on. And it was something that I worked very hard to push for because there was as a pharmacist, you also want them to have the rights. So yeah. And thereafter, I actually went on to do health regulations. So I do a lot of regulatory work, and which is why now I'm actually in the private sector, also still doing regulatory affairs. Maybe just a reason why I moved on to the private sector was because I wanted to see things from the other side. Normally, as a regulator, people come to you and they're all very quiet. So I want to see the things behind the scenes. What do they do before they speak to the regulators? What do they actually share with the regulators?
Yeah. And how interesting it is in the past that all of us, I think, not all of us, at least you and me, we were struggling in farm law and now you're in regulation.
I used to fall asleep so much.
Okay, thank you. All right, and so our next guest is, she's actually my former boss. Having, most of you might know that I started my career in community pharmacy, and after that, I started my own business. We went out to do a lot of work in smoking cessation. And Doreen is actually the person who gave me my opportunity to work in a hospital. Always energetic, always colorful. Welcome, Doreen.
Hi. Nice to have you invite me on the show and excited to chat with you guys today.
Yes, okay. Thank you. All right. So Doreen, let's just start with you. So I mean, a lot of people know you as someone who is very energetic, very passionate about our kind of work. What keeps you passionate?
Well, I would say the patients. I think mostly when you work on a patient and from somebody who's like very, very unmotivated, suddenly everything's well controlled. No, blood pressure is well controlled, lipids are well controlled, diabetes is also well controlled. I think that keeps me going. And in spite of how we all think that we can protocolize things, right? Actually, every patient is very, very different. And you can do all the science you want, but if you fail to get to what makes a person tick, right? It's just almost impossible to make them motivated to do what they're supposed to do. I think, Sean, you know best because you work with smoking people, right? It's like so difficult to achieve. And of course, I try to constantly improve myself. So the piece that Jasmine pushed, that collaborative prescribing piece, right? even the time when I was still head, I was like killing myself with all the work already. And so we can see, and then went on the first batch of NCPP some more. I wanted to die. Then you know how it's like when you're the guinea pig batch, right? You're kind of like, oh my god, what is this? That nobody knows what happened. Like what were we hit with? Like every weekend was burn reading. Nobody gave us mental preparation how difficult it was going to be. Yeah, so it was like, I think life is you just have to keep finding challenges, finding something new, and then constantly try to grow, and that's how you keep engaged and occupied lah. Yeah, don't become a rock that grows mold. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, speaking about a rock that grows more, I mean, it's for Jasmine and I think it's been five years since we were practicing full time. Well, I mean, we still see patients as in a part-time role. But Jasmine, what keeps you passionate? Because you see, beyond 5 years as a full-time pharmacist, every time that we spoke, every time we had dinner, when we go out, you always tell me that wherever you go, you always present yourself first as a pharmacist. Why is that?
I think like my main gripe when I was still a very young pharmacist, my main concern was that people weren't very aware of the profession and aware of what are the things that pharmacists could do. There was never a situation where I had a doctor say that, you know what, this aspect the pharmacist knows better, and then I'll let the pharmacist deal with it. And that was a thing that I felt like, you know, we have so much to offer, yet we don't have the opportunity to offer it. So, which is why I took on roles when I went to MOH. I wanted to really see what the ministry's perception is of pharmacists. And it was actually quite surprising and refreshing. When I went, I remember we had those tea session with the senior management. The senior management went like, as a pharmacist, you know what? They're the accountants of healthcare. They're super anal. And I was like,
oh my god.
Really?
Oh no.
And then they said, but they're very, very, so he also recognized that actually they are a very smart batch. And no questions about the competency. So it was something that was very refreshing. But it was, even though he said that he was one person, and I realized that there was a lot of senior management that wasn't really aware of the pharmacists and what they do. And there were so many pharmacists in MOH, and I was trying to rally the pharmacists to actually speak up a bit more even in MOH, to push for the policies and make themselves recognized as pharmacists. Like, I am a pharmacist, and that's why I am qualified to give this statement and make this opinion.
Yeah. Why do you think that people in MOH, you know, where in your experience, why do you think that they see us as like, you know, operational or inventory experts kind of stuff?
I think part of the reason that even when I experience, I've seen a lot of pharmacists when we have a discussion and then there is a problem. I have pharmacists who IM each other and go like, oh, actually I have this solution, don't know if it's good. I was like, I think it's a great solution. And why don't you just speak up? And they're like, oh, but it's not the best solution. I think one thing that pharmacists need to realize that you don't have to offer the best solution. More brains are better than one. Put it out there and we can all refine it together. And there are times that I try to push pharmacists in my very small role at MOH. I would say like, how about this? And then the bosses will be like, oh, that's something that we can consider. And I'll be like saying, oh, actually this pharmacist came out with the idea. Then would you like to elaborate more? So I force them out. I force them to speak up, and it gets them recognized. And hey, actually this person has very good ideas, and it's something that we should help promote. So I try to promote pharmacists and I try to help them gain a bit more confidence as well.
I think it's pretty similar to the, you know, what I try to do, especially in community where, you know, sometimes when you do a good job, right, and you have a patient that comes and says, oh, you know, oh, you're very good. And the kind of response I typically give is, yeah, you know, it's me and my friends, this is what we are all able to do. So, you know, if you have anything, you can come and look for us pharmacists again. And that's why you try to build each other up, you know, as a profession. Doreen, what do you think? Do people in the hospital recognize pharmacists for being experts in medication?
Actually, I think that a lot of times people look at us, right, thinking that hospital people are the most clinical. And a lot of the new grads, right, they want to go to hospital because, you know, we get a lot of exposure. Oh, so clinical. Actually, I think the problems are the same. There are little pockets of people who have problems with us getting more and more clinical practice space as well. And incidentally, when Jasmine was recounting all her experiences, right, I have okay, so I've actually got these two theories about pharmacists, right? And
Okay.
I've said it many, many times. And Grace, Grace, our Grace Chang, who
Mm-mm.
is
Yep, yep.
part of our team at KDPH, she always said I should write a book about these two, these two theories about pharmacists. And so the first theory, right, is that pharmacists are just so OCD, anal retentive,
Yes.
must get 0.00005 accuracy, right? Then they can do, right? If it's not 0.00005, not 120% can succeed one, better not say,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Yeah. Must wait for the stars to align for, the time align very, then can say one. Okay, that's disease number one, first disease. And actually, I think a lot of pharmacists have that. And okay, I'm not saying this to dig on people. I think that
Yeah.
when I was a young pharmacist, I had the same problem. And it was a time during PharmD that I started changing, and I'll tell you what happened. So the second disease, right, I feel pharmacists have, right, is that they do a lot of work, right? Very hardworking. Chiong come at 8 a.m. in the morning, leave at 8 p.m. at night, work 12 hours a day. Then they, wow, so hardworking, must make record everybody, make sure interview everybody ready. Then they after that, wow, feel so good because I did my work. And then they don't know how to present themselves. They don't know how to say what they've done. They don't know how to navigate the system. They don't know how to navigate the whole institution, right? Then as a result, they keep doing, right? Then one fine day when something, some big program happens, and the doctors only ask for APN, for example, or ask for physiotherapists. Then they forget pharmacists, right? Always like that one, right? Then after that, the pharmacist, how? Hard. Piang.
Yeah.
The second
Do you think that this is one of the reasons why we have some of the statements that came to us, and one of the things that say, "Oh, you work overtime every single day," but
Yeah.
without a word of thanks or respect from your colleagues or fellow healthcare workers. If pharmacists are working so hard every day, it doesn't make sense that we are not recognized. So, I mean, is it really because are we just too afraid to tell everybody what we do? What do you think, Doreen?
I am just trying to get behind what it means by not being recognized.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think that we're not recognized.
Okay.
But perhaps I think that it's what we think that we want to do that people don't accept. Then maybe the person who said we are not recognized said that we're not recognized. Does that
What
make
do
sense?
we want to do?
I'm not sure what the context was for this particular comment, but I definitely do not think we are not recognized. Because if, let's just put it this way, right? If we are not important or not recognized in this institution, right, what would they be doing? If today we got automation in all the various places, right, inpatient, outpatient, have they ever tried to cut our manpower?
Mhm.
No, what? They never retrenched us or anything like that, right? So if they don't recognize the work that we do, right, then we'll be first people to be cut from the payroll. But that hasn't happened. So I really don't think that we're not recognized. Yeah. So maybe the sentiment of not being recognized comes from the fact that they don't get enough affirmation. Right? Perhaps from the bosses or the classmates or the batchmates or the doctors. But I think such is an Asian society. I don't think it's just particular to just the pharmacists, but in the general society in Asia, Asians are not the, wow, good job, man. I really appreciate you so much. You did this and this and this and this. I mean, firstly, we are super busy. We are always busy ourselves, right? And then by the time we go home, we're so tired already. Where got time to go and thank people? Right? That's not a good excuse, but that's, I think, the situation. So the whole environment is such that we don't spend enough time affirming one another. Yeah, I think that's why people feel unrecognized.
Yeah.
I, for one, feel like nobody cares whether I live or I die, right? But that's not
Really?
entirely
You
true.
think that way?
Yeah, I do. I always think that I'm just a statistic in the whole hospital, when I do my stuff and stuff like that. But then occasionally you get people telling you that they've noticed that little thing that you did. And then as you start to realize that actually every little thing that you do, right, people will see. So Chinese say 看在心里, right? But people don't say. So it's just the fact that you feel like you're not recognized. But I do think that there are a lot of people out there who see what you've done and they appreciate you for it. Yeah.
Jasmine, what do you think? I mean, do people see us and appreciate our kind of work, but just don't express it in a way that we can feel it, maybe?
I think partly one of the reasons why, for me personally, or why they wouldn't express recognition is because of the relationship that a lot of pharmacists have with doctors. In the polyclinics, when I first started, I was so irritated. Every time I make an intervention, I tell the doctor will be like, yeah, what you want now? Then after that, okay, I'll change and put down the phone. And it was always a very negative relationship that you had with the doctors. And it wasn't pleasant for me, it wasn't pleasant for them. So what I actually thought, but if you see the relationship between doctors and nurses, it's perfect. The doctors see them as their hands and legs. They can talk and chit chat, and that made me think, like, why can't we have that kind of relationship? So coming as a pharmacist, feeling that you know more about drugs than the doctors, I decided to put aside my pride and make friends with the doctors. And actually, the situation changed. So when you call them, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have made this error." And the kind of response, the kind of recognition of your work changes because you actually have a relationship with them. And I think that is one thing that we need to really build as well. So even when I was in MOH and we had committees, right? MOH always said, doctors, we select doctors will say, "Oh, I think this nurse I work very closely with, we should bring in this person as well." Then in your mind, like, then pharmacists there. Then I will go like, "Oh, actually the pharmacist also can contribute in this area." So in every subcommittee or every committee we had, I pushed in the pharmacist, regardless of whether it was a decision. I said that it has to be. Then I always go, "You have to be fair. There must be parity across the professions." And when the pharmacists came in and the doctors don't really work with them as much, they realized that actually the pharmacists can contribute quite a lot. And what was the best about the pharmacists was the anal aspect of it. When they were drafting the guidelines, they were like, pharmacists were like, you can't just say this, because people would view it differently. There's different perception. You have to change the word to reflect this. And then it was something very refreshing for them. Oh, they didn't know that we were so detailed. And after a while, it was more like, the pharmacist can do it better. Even at the end of it, right, we need to let the pharmacist proofread. Not the doctor, not the nurse, but the pharmacist proofread the final document. So it actually gives pharmacists a lot of opportunity to make the final say, if you think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, this number one got some advantage one.
Yes, the disease to me is not a crime, and it's actually like, I think it's what pharmacists are trained to be very anal. And like for me, when I graduated, I was like, I don't think I'm the most anal person or not the most observant, but because of pharmacy training in school, you're actually already quite anal than the normal average, and it's something that we should appreciate.
Yeah. Wow, very interesting. It's never this relationship that we have with other professionals. It's not easy. I think maybe like for me right at the start, I in my work I've always had good relationships with the doctors that I dealt with in the community, right? Because they call us, they ask for advice, and sometimes we call them to do interventions. There's always this form of mutual respect. And initially it wasn't easy for me also because a lot of pride, right? You come out like what the hell, I am expert there. Yeah. Despite my grades, I still felt like I was an expert. Yeah, I think it comes to putting our ego aside and starting to realize that at the end of the day, you're just trying to create a positive outcome for the patient. And the best way to do that really is to make friends. It's very hard to do anything you want to do alone now. And if you try to go at it alone, you're always limited. Wait, Doreen, do you think that that pharmacists like to do stuff on their own and, tend to be less of a team player kind of person?
I think that's intrinsically interlinked with our extreme drive to be precise about things, right? And keep control. Yeah, I think because this whole profession attracts the type of personalities that are like that. Not necessarily bad, but I think it's we have to learn to let go. As a very young pharmacist, I used to be like that also, because like what Jasmine says, all the guidelines and everything, right? You rather than write everything yourself, because then you can write the way that you want it, express the way you want it, so that it comes across this particular way. And then I start to learn that actually different people have got different ways of seeing things as well. And because the reasons why there are so many people who are in the committee and multidisciplinary committees, because you need those various point of views, right? So yeah, I think it's important to start to open up perspectives lah. And so I think as I grow older, when I start to accept that okay lah, maybe things can slow down a bit, smell the roses a bit more, then that's when I start to realize actually there is a strength, right, in the multidisciplinary teams. And even when people you perceive are slower, it's mainly because of their other barriers to maybe they have got other points of views or they have got other reservations. And I like what you guys said about relationships. It's kind of like reaching out to the other party and seeing from their point of view why things are important to them and why they seem to be not responding or doing this slowly. And then why do they particularly behave a particular way with you, right? Like Jasmine says, I call the doctor and the doctor's like, what do you want now? You know, like why would the doctor respond like this? Yeah, I think to be fair, right, we call a lot of rubbish things also lah. Right. I mean, we call doctors for a lot of nonsense small things also.
Yeah.
Then which is irritating lah. So I mean, with every irritating phone call, there's always some important phone call that may potentially save the patient. So I think we just have to learn how to balance as we grow older more.
Do you think this is a result of the system? Because I mean, one of the things that the comments that came in was, you want to change like fibogel on a prescription, also must call doctor, and it's a GSL item. I mean, for everyone who's not aware, general sales list means you can just get it off the shelf. You open a mama shop downstairs, also you can sell. But because it's prescribed, then if we want to make a change, we have to call the doctor for an intervention. So do you think it's because of the system that's why doctors are irritated with us making these calls of the less trivial things, such that when you need to call them for something more important, then it starts off on a very bad note?
I think the whole scene is very complex. Even something as simple as paracetamol that you say is gotten over the counter, right? When it's dished out from the hospital setting or the polyclinic setting, right? The patients themselves will see it in different light. They will see it as though it's being endorsed by the hospital or the polyclinic, right? Because it's being dealt out by us, as opposed to when they had to go out themselves to go and get it from over the counter. Yes, it's easy for them, but firstly, because we dispense it to them, it makes it easier for them to get that particular agent than if they went out to buy themselves. That's one. Two, they will see it as endorsement, and so they will probably use it in a particular degree.
But how about the pharmacists, from the pharmacist point of view? Because they feel that these are very trivial kind of stuff. Why do I have to do things like that when I study 4 years plus 1 year of pre-reg?
I think it's the lack of trust. I think, like Jasmine pointed out, the fact that we don't work as closely enough with doctors. The people who have this fear that we would try to intervene on everything and change things, it's just unknown lah. Because and as doctors, you also want to have control over your patients and your prescription, right? You cannot have somebody changing your orders and then after that you don't even know that they change your orders. It might be simple, to you as fibogel, right? But I can think of many therapeutic uses for fiber. Like, they may have particularly wanted to give that certain amount of fiber for a particular type of gastro type of patients or surgery type of patients, and they might have intentionally wanted to do it this particular way. So I think it would be hard to say that across the board I'll agree to it this particular way. So what we did at our site, right, was we moved, say for example, a specific discipline, and we had a list of pre-approved things that we don't call doctors about. So you can actually work like this. It might be confusing to the ground people. You may have to start to remember, this one Panadol and whatever nots for I don't call. But for other disciplines, I must call. But there are reasons why different people would have allowed you to do different things different ways anyway. And I think that if we know how to navigate the system, while it might be confusing because there are different permutations of how you do things on the ground, but you can slowly edge your way towards situations where you don't need to call.
I think also it's important to remember that you can also change the system. So
Exactly.
like Doreen mentioned, right, if you already have a standing order from a doctor that you don't have to call, if this change needs to be made, then that is something that you have actually done to change the system, because it's in the interest of yourself. So you don't have to call a doctor, in the interest of the doctor not having to receive your call. So I think in a lot of situations, like if we feel very trapped, you have to step back and think what would be a win-win situation. It cannot be just a win for one profession. It has to be a win for both. And I think the one thing that I was reading this book and I was, it's about teaching you how to engage someone. And sometimes you have a good solution. You're like, I'm so angry. I don't understand why the people don't understand my solution. It's so simple. It's so easy to implement, but they just don't want to hear me. And sometimes you need to see even the best proposal can be thrown out the window. And what this book actually said was you should actually try to talk to the person, negotiate with them, and then help them think of their solution. So the solution can come from them. Because the outcome you want to achieve is that less work for me and you, right? I don't care who the solution comes from as long as it's implemented. So if you can get the other person, talk to the other person, push the other person to think, oh, actually, this could be a good idea, right? Then you go, yes, but actually you came up with the idea, but it doesn't matter as long as the idea can be implemented.
That one 最高境界.
Yeah. because even when I was working on the prescribing piece, right, there was no concern about the competency of pharmacists. No one questioned the qualifications, but then somehow or rather it wasn't moving, and it was very strange. So when I was working and writing the policy with the team, right, honestly, the policy never changed for the 9 years that it was stuck. It was just convincing the right people, and you realize that actually making sure that people understand the principles behind it and helping and getting people to support you was the key to pushing out a good proposal. Yeah.
Wow, thanks. Okay, at this point, I just want to thank all of you who are joining us. Hui Ting is here, Raymond, Lakshmi, Aaron, Fong Ling. Thank you for joining us. This is the 9th episode of Life, Love, and Lipidemia. It's our first episode where we actually talk about all these challenging statements that our colleagues say, and we want to just address them and share our thoughts. Okay, just now, Jasmine, you were mentioning about remembering that we can change the system. Right? Do you think pharmacies are afraid to change the system?
I think also, as Doreen mentioned, we are afraid to voice up because we don't have the perfect, accurate solution.
So what you're saying is that if pharmacies were just a little bit less perfectionist, then things would be better?
I would say not less perfectionist, but less averse to risk, and take the risk. Take the risk to offer up the solution. And if it's not a good solution, then, just sayang your own pride. Okay, never mind, we do it, give a better one next time. But you don't have to always provide the best solution, but you just need to speak up. And I think that is what, in my opinion, what doctors are good at. When they are in a meeting, the solution not good, also they just say it out, Then other doctors, because friend, oh yeah, I think, but then perhaps we could do this instead, help refine the solution. And I think that is something that we should start doing. And I've also seen so many pharmacists, even MOH, coming out with fantastic solutions, but not saying anything. And that really, really hurts me. I'm like, just say it out. Then by the time they decided to say, right, somebody else said already. And it's so wasted because actually they came out with the idea first. And I think it's really more about taking the initiative. It's not something that comes natural. Even to me, the first time I wanted to say something when I was NHG Polyclinics, right? And then I was part of the public education subcommittee. And everybody in the rest of the subcommittees were all pharmacy managers. So I sat there I was so scared to say anything. But then this is innate fear. I'm like, I want to say something, but scared, then I never mind, just go for it. And then just say it. And then you realize that once you've done it and you've done it a few times, it becomes very much easier to actually share your views. And I think it's important to know that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be corrected. Yeah. I don't think we need to be perfect. We don't have to have the perfect answers, but I think we need to be by the time we already offer the answer, we're already quite perfect because we already checked so many points of that solution already. So honestly, you think that the perfection is not there. Actually, the perfection is almost 80% there already.
Doreen, what do you think? Are pharmacists too afraid to be corrected?
Yes, I think we are too afraid to fail. I think it comes from the fact that a lot of times pharmacists who went to pharmacy school, right, generally have very good grades. So you're quite used to performing well. I remember many, many years ago, and I won't say who were the ones, but there were actually people who, when they didn't get a performance grade A, actually cried. At work, they cried. So it's just very 好胜, I think, in general. Not a bad thing, Actually, it's not a bad thing because, you want to be able to be successful in all that you do. But I like what Jasmine said about being risk averse, and she's absolutely right. I think there's a very large spectrum between failing and then taking that risk and all, right? So there's actually always just challenge yourself to take a little bit more risk, and then of course don't be reckless, go and jump down the cliff and then after that lose your head. Yeah, so I think also that we don't quite know how to navigate the system sometimes. So it's probably important to gain some institutional awareness. So I think Jasmine being in MOH for some time would also know that the hierarchies, right? And you can't be like happy. If the DMS is in session, you just happy. Me, I want to say something, also cannot do something like that. So I think there's always a time and space, and then it's always important to be introspect in how you would run things, and then know who is your next level up, and then who's the next level up after that, and who you can talk with in order to present your ideas. And particularly when you are afraid that your ideas are not good enough, I think that's important to clear with somebody who's relatively senior and who could perhaps help you to position your idea a bit more sharpen the
But Doreen, you see, there are a lot of things that we want to work on. There are a lot of ideas, especially the ones who are coming into the profession. They have a lot of ideas. They have energy. They have drive. They have passion. And I know that there are some who are starting their pre-reg and they are listening in on this. What can these young pharmacists do to be less risk averse? I mean, because if they make a mistake, is it a case where their preceptors or their mentors or their seniors are going to bash them, and that's going to affect their performance or appraisal?
I think the safety thing is always weighing very highly on the young pharmacists' minds. So I like that everyone is passionate and really raring to go when they hit the ground running, right? But do remember that, especially if you're pre-reg in the hospital system, there's really a lot of complexities involved in the whole system of things. And I always tell the young pharmacists, please don't be too impatient. No? As a pre-reg, right? Actually, all you need to do is make sure that you are safe. That's the first thing, be safe. Meaning you first pick up the doses and everything else. Don't try and hero and do too many things in that 6 months that you're doing a pre-reg. It's just impossible to achieve too much. And then in your
But they're
first
trying
year,
to make an impression, right?
well, I
How
don't think
else do you make an impression if you don't bang a table or flip a table or try to do something different? Because everyone's trying to stand out from everyone else, what? And now
you
the
you
job of
bang
a
people,
pre-reg is not
people hate
secured.
you more. No, but if you bang people, right, then actually you make a negative impression, not a good one, right? So I think the person who makes a good impression is someone who always takes the initiative. Like, even though I might say that you do your day-to-day well, and your safety is the key thing that you look after, right? But definitely in every setting there will be sessions to discuss cases or discuss topics with the pre-regs. Sure, we'll have such situations one. So in those situations, right, when you actually have the right attitude to approach things, just take the extra step. Take the initiative. Like if things are not in place or you have questions that you want to clarify or expectations that you want to know more, then take the extra step to say, hey, I volunteer, can I speak with a pharmacist in charge and stuff like that. And people will remember the fact that you took that initiative, right, to do things differently. The more important thing is your attitude towards wanting to learn. Right? First, seek to understand. When you're in a new environment, 6 months is actually a very short time. It's hard to try and understand the system of things just because you're there for just 6 months. So take that time to understand, to know more, to see where you fit in first. I think as a pre-reg, it's not the time to try and be a shining star, I think the pre-reg time is when you try to establish yourself and ask yourself whether this is where you want to be in the longer term.
So how do they secure a job then, if they are not the
Well,
shining star?
Perhaps then, at the end of it all, it really is time and space, right? So do you die must work in hospital one man? You don't work in hospital, you will die, man. It's not like the job's available, ma. Right? So it's just time and space. I mean, you might have chosen a place where there are only 6 positions and there are 12 of you vying for that particular job. Yeah, but there'll always be circumstances where you have a chance to do that particular thing. So I always rationalize within myself. If you are meant to be in a place, right, then you would have performed a particular way. And really sometimes you're maybe the 7th person that they cannot hire, then okay, maybe it's just a bit too bad. Then just go look for other opportunities. There's not going to be an end in this world, right? And plus now, I think our profession is looking towards a lot more community work. So I don't think hospital is like really die must go hospital, because you have a lot more opportunities even in the community setting as well. So yeah, it's time and space. I mean, there are people who have gone out to industry and they've come back to practice in hospital. So it's not like after PH must have that job, mama. You can always just go walk one big round, then you decide, okay, I want to come back hospital. And there will always be chances.
Mm.
Jasmine,
And I
what do you
also
think?
feel-
When people are trying to walk one big round because either they have no choice because they didn't get accepted to where they want to go, or because it is a choice. What do you think is not going well as they are trying to navigate that round? Because if this is what's happening right now, the result of it is that we don't have people who dare to take risks. If you groom people in the first 6 months or 9 months during their pre-reg to say, oh, just be safe, the result is this. Are you trying to undo like 9 months of work to make them more willing to take risks and not being afraid to embarrass themselves?
I think
I
the
clarify my statement. Not say just be safe means don't speak up. Just be safe is know when to speak up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not saying don't speak up. It's not hide in a corner and then like just make sure that you back correctly. That's not what I meant.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jasmine.
It's okay. Actually, for me, I also had the same impression. Like I cannot do anything to embarrass myself in front of my preceptor. That was my key when I was a pre-reg. But then I wanted to find out more about polyclinic. But then I also feel like if I ask my preceptor, then she'll think I'm very dumb, right? I ask stupid questions. So what I did was that you make friends with people. You make friends when they always send you on courses, right? They send you for courses, you meet different parts. You meet the ops people, you meet the nurses, you meet the patient service associates, you meet the who else? The health attendants. So okay, I will explain, like speaking to different ops people, you find out about how actually the polyclinic operates, who is in charge, who you need to speak up to, right? Who you need to talk to in order to get yourself heard. Then when you've identified that person, the health attendant is your best friend because they know exactly when the doctor is free. So what happened was when I talked to the doctor, asked the health attendant say, 我帮你啊，你等一下，那个 queue number 我帮你 hold 一下。Okay, then you go in from the side door, 你就可以跟医生讲话了。So it was really about like trying to navigate beyond the pharmacy.
Yeah.
And for me, what I did was just making friends with them and just be kepo a bit like when the auntie sweeping floor. I said, Auntie, you okay or not? You know, how you doing? The auntie will tell you a whole lot of stories. But all this is building connections. And you don't necessarily only have to build connections with the top. You have to remember that your health attendants, even though all they do is just put patients in and help the doctors buy lunch and stuff, they are super important. And there is no one less important person in the healthcare system. So I think that is one of the key to actually get yourselves heard. The next thing that I actually, oh my God, this actually slipped my mind. But yeah, literally just slipped my mind. But I was like going to say, I was like, yeah.
I know those moments.
Okay, Doreen, what do you think? I mean, if now that we talk about like building relationships with people up, across different professions and not just up, right? Like who we perceive to be at a level that's reporting to us. Yeah.
How
a lot of
important
pharmacists try to think about what else they can do within the profession. It's a case of, so okay, I'm a pharmacist or I'm a pharmacy technician, and as I slowly try to work my way up in whatever path that's designed for me, some of the statements that we are getting what they say is there's no future in pharmacy. There is no career progression in pharmacy. I mean, this thing can be seen from different perspectives, right? You can see it from the industry perspective, maybe slightly different. Community pharmacy, maybe slightly different. Hospital, different. And when you go into regulatory or MOH, different. But what's it like in the hospital scene when you have someone who tells you that there is no career progression in pharmacy?
I think this person who says no career progression, I would say maybe referring to ranking and promotions, like beyond the frontline work, I would think. Progression wise, right? If you're talking about the ranking, it is true that it takes really, really long to get promoted to the next level, like beyond the senior level. That is a fact. So if you are looking for a profession or a practice site where you are going to get like new titles every other year, then sorry lah, hospital is really not the place for you. But in terms of growth, right, I don't think that we are short of growth opportunities. There are always things to do, things to learn. There are no short of work groups to put you on. I think it is wrong. It's probably inaccurate to say that you don't grow, because whenever you are put in a new work group or a new scope or a new job or a new assignment, you always get to learn new skills. whatever Jasmine said earlier about like talking to the various people is very important, because it's like if you don't understand other people's point of view, right, then how effective is whatever you're going to recommend going to be, right? If you want something that you build to work, whether it's a policy or it's a workflow or maybe even just a program to work, you've got to actually figure out what really is going on the ground. I'll give you an example at our KDPH site. We have this initiative called the Capsule, right? Where the patients come out straight from SOC and then they stop by at this particular temporary place, which we call the time capsule, where all the pharmacy staff are sitting, and then the finance
For
staff.
those of you who are not sure, SOC is the outpatient clinic, specialist outpatient clinics. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So this particular idea was really to bring the pharmacy team closer to the doctors, okay, so that the moment the patient hits you, right, it's not like 1 hour later before you call the doctor about interventions, right? It's like right on the spot where that you come in and straight away verify the orders already. So in order to get this working, right, we had to work with SOC nurses, we had to work with the PSAs, we have to understand the flow of MediSafe chronic disease programs. Seemingly simple, you can argue, wow, how come we cannot just plant ourselves up there and then plant ourselves in that flow? It's not so easy lah, you had to go look at what kind of patient flow and stuff like that. And so it's important to work with other people to make this going. So you can say that you don't have progression by ranking, but certainly when you're given pieces of job like that to do, right, projects like this to do, right, you will learn new skills and you grow every year, right, because you learn new things every single time.
And there's ample opportunity?
Of course, there's ample opportunity. We are always one. It's just a matter of whether you want to apply yourself to that situation or not. There's always work to do. It's whether it's something that would appeal to you, right? I mean, for example, the capsule thing is very much operational. But there is some clinical perspectives to things, because then you had to put a particular type of seniority of people at the panel just so that they can pick up the right interventions for a particular type of group and stuff like that, right? They have the same seniority level and stuff like that. So it really is about finding an environment or a situation where you can get to expand on what you like to do. I always tell young pharmacists, I took 8 years before I figured out what I really wanted to do. 8 years. Okay, and I came from a time where we didn't have a fixed section. That means now, your pharmacists all finish triage training, right? They go straight to either outpatient or inpatient, a very fixed section, and then they don't get to rotate anymore. And I came from a time when we did everything. Like I got to do DI, I got to do purchasing, I got to do nursing home reviews, everything. And yet I took 8 years to figure out what I really wanted to do. Yeah. So I
Do you think the young
really,
pharmacists are impatient in trying to figure out what they want?
Yes, because I think in their minds they had this particular idea of how progression is, but which is not quite, I guess, not played out in the real world, because expectations and the real world don't quite meet, and that's why I think the disappointment to say that they don't progress. So I think it's important to explore deeply what you mean by progression and promotions and where you expect to be. Like if you really don't have an idea and you're just inside me keep thinking, I want to be promoted to senior pharmacist, I want to be promoted to principal pharmacist, I want to be in charge, but for what? You need to be asking yourself, for what? Yeah, what is that going to help you with in your life? Is this a piece that you really need to be meeting? And even if you got there, what is it going to be different for you in the longer term of things? Is this part of your own achievable, like long-term plan or 10-year plan? Is it part of a piece of that puzzle to get towards that end point? So it's, I think, very important to focus on that. I think when Liak was still around, right, he used to ask us to draw this epitaph.
A what?
Yeah, an epitaph. You guys, I think I don't know whether at your pre-reg time you had this leadership session with him. So an epitaph is what he said, you need to draw this drawing thing, right? And ask yourself what first comes to your mind when you first want people to remember you by when you die. Like things that you want people to remember you by when you die. If you die tomorrow, right? What do you want people to say? Hey, Sean was very good at this. So that actually guides you in your life choices, right? Because you basically are true to yourself whenever you make choices. So don't gauge yourself against the rest of the world. Maybe you are seeing other industries who are progressing, like, there's much more money, the pay is so much higher. So comfy, you got 9 to 5 job. I always had work shifts, stuff like this. The grass will always be greener on the other side, right? But at the end of the day, it's you asking yourself where you want to be at the end of it all. And if this, whatever you're doing today, is it part and parcel of that? If it's not, right, then say goodbye lah. Don't need to go and say, okay, I don't have this, I don't have that. Because the environment might not actually be right for you to ask for all these as well.
Jasmine, what do you think? You took a slightly different path because you were 5 years in the polyclinic before you left to go and study. I mean, like for me, I've never been promoted in my life. Yeah, but you took a slightly different path, Jasmine, and you went overseas and then to study, and then you came back and you contributed from the policy point of view. What do you think about career progression for pharmacists?
I think when you look at career progression, when you think about it, what is more important? What is the reason you want a career progression for?
Yeah.
Is it because you want more money? Do you want more recognition? What is the purpose of your career progression? And if you look at it from one angle of career progression, which is learning opportunities, then there are a lot of learning opportunities, even beyond pharmacy. And that was why one of the reasons why I went to MOH as well, because I wanted to learn more from a policy perspective, how decisions were made. But I have to be honest that I went to MOH also because I felt that my pay was too low, and I felt like I couldn't progress fast enough. But then I also asked myself, is it like when Doreen said, is this the place you want to be? If you feel like you can't grow in this place, then you should be elsewhere. It has to be something that you really want to stay and really want to contribute to. And if you continue to have that kind of contribution to that sector, you won't have this thought process because it is the recognition for your work is when you have it implemented. But I think the main gripe is probably you find that a lot of pharmacists probably find that their pay is too low and they want to get more for what they have done. And this actually brought me, I actually attended a course with Teo Helian, with Teo Chi Hian's sister. And she always had this thing, if you do whatever you're expected to do, no matter how much you do within your job scope, you do not deserve a promotion. You are just performing what you are expected to do. If you want to do, if you want a promotion, you need to be able to value add. What more can you do? What else can you provide to the system? And that's one thing that really struck me because I always felt like I do more means that I deserve more. But that's not the case. You do more, you're just being a very hard worker, but are you being a smart worker? And that's something that we also need to consider. You can't just look at the amount of work or amount of time that you put in. You also have to consider the value of the work that you put in and how does that work that you do add value? And that's one thing that I feel like a lot of people don't think about. And that could be one of the reasons why they feel a bit upset about like their current position. And after a while, I guess it's really about finding out what you want. And like the way you say you spend 8 years, I also spent like about 5 to 8 years because I when I went to MOH, did I really know what I want? I wanted to learn, but I don't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really know what was my niche. I didn't know like what I was good at. I just I just wanted to learn something else. And did we write a lot of policy papers? Do I know how to talk to the senior management? Not really, but that's some skills that I want to learn. And that's why I went on to MOH. And you have to see growth of a pharmacist beyond the pharmacy being in a pharmacy setting. In the industry, in other industries, I've seen pharmacists in consultancy roles because of the fact that you pay so much attention to detail. Being anal really is not a crime.
Yes, it can work for you.
So you have you can go into consultancy. For me, I went to regulatory affairs, and in every role that you play, actually a lot of pharmacy skill sets you do apply. Other than your attention to detail, one other aspect is you have to remember is that we are the only healthcare profession that study law, like pharmacy law. And it helps so much because when people were trying to implement solutions, right, then you think about it, then you think about your pharmacy law and say, I don't think this one can, man. Because I remember you're not allowed. And it's something that you can actually voice out. And it's because you were taught the skills, you know how to interpret the legislation, you realize the importance of legislation that actually helps you work very well in regulatory. And that was one thing that I truly enjoyed. I used to do so badly in farm law, but now it's something that I enjoy because firstly, you can see you have to understand the policy perspectives that actually develop the legislations. And then you know what? Legislations are not hard and fast things you can change. If I didn't change, then how the pharmacists have prescribing rights? It's about knowing which aspects to change, whether or not the policy, you're meeting the same policy objective. Does that policy objective need to change? So there are a lot of changes that we can push as for pharmacists. And it doesn't only, you don't have to restrict yourself to a single sector. There's so many areas that you can contribute to. But I think one of the key things is that you have to know that there is a very steep learning curve. You enter into an area where you're not trained for, it's damn scary. And things that you take for granted, like just speaking to your senior pharmacist, or your pharmacy manager, it's so easy to speak to them, right? You can't speak that way. And that's
Do you
one
think that
thing.
it's an issue that as pharmacists think of how to progress? I mean, normally you're pre-reg and then you work 1 year and then at 2 years you start to get a bit itchy,
Mm.
all right? And you start to think of promotion. Do you think that pharmacies are doing too much of the regular day-to-day work versus thinking about what is the skill required for the next level? Because you see, I've the way that I work in my business is, and at least based on the people whom I've spoken to, I think that a lot of people, they try to, okay, so if let's say you are a operations level and you want to move up to supervisor level, and people say, okay, supervisors do a different job scope from operations level, correct? Supervisor level is more work, more stress, more responsibility. I mean, that's what you get paid for, right? You get paid because a different level of responsibility. But you ask the operations person to consider taking up a little bit of supervisory work. They say, it's not in my pay scale. Why should I spend the extra time after work? You're not paying me. Why should I do it? You know, and because they don't think about that perspective, then it doesn't give the boss the confidence to promote him. Because as a boss, right? I mean, from my perspective, when I'm leading a team, if I want to promote somebody to a different role, I want to have the confidence that this person is able to get the job done. But the person say it's not within his job scope now. So what am I supposed to do? Promote him first and then see if he can do it? Yeah, but I think that this is something that is interesting to speak about, because pharmacies work very hard. I don't think any of us can deny that in terms of hours of work, in terms of the stress that we see from patients. But are we working on the wrong things? I mean, like Doreen, in the hospital side, do you think that do you see these kinds of situations happening where people don't want to do something that's one level up because it's not within their job scope?
All the time. It happens all the time. I think it's also not quite their fault lah, because I think, for example, the for the pharmacy at the hospitals, right? Of course, Jasmine was also from polyclinic. Waiting time is the most important thing, right? Like we must make sure that we meet that waiting time thing. And then so as a result, a lot of times it seems like it's always the first priority lah. So everything else, if waiting time suffers, then of course everything else must be dropped, and then you must go and attend to all the patients to make sure waiting time is met. But that being said, I think through the years we have started to recognize that people needed to be given time during office hours to do whatever they were assigned to do. And like I said, there's no short of opportunities to try on projects and all. And I think our site is where we do a lot of kaizens or gaishan kind of projects, change in workflows, change in influencing doctors' prescribing and all that. And so actually you're always given opportunity, right? So if you're going to start to say, oh, my office hours is 9 to 5 and I'm not going to do the extra, then yeah, so you never ever had the chance to apply yourself and would never ever know whether you could apply yourself. And so you said it very, very well when you said that, yeah, if I didn't know whether you could have the chance of success if I ever did promote you, right, then I will not dare to promote you. That is exactly how bosses think. And I'll tell you, because I was ex-boss myself, that is how we think. So if I give you a task and you can't even do that task well, then walao, how I dare to give you more things to do, right? So, but at the same time, if I give you more things to do and you are barely even coping, but you know exactly how to cope better. That means you kind of, from time you can see it initially struggling, then you will go work with other people or get your bosses or your supervisors to help, seniors to help. And then you manage to cope with the thing and you deliver it anyway. And so what we usually do is just keep giving you bigger and bigger and bigger responsibilities. And so people will always say, we promote you into that role because you can perform in that role already, not promote you into a role that we think you can perform, but maybe you cannot perform. It's kind of like we have to know your potential before we can promote you, right? If not, you haven't even like demonstrate to us that you can do it. So it interlinks with the fact, like Jasmine say, how we always work very hard, right? Even stay back to work and stuff like that. But working smart is important, right? I'm not saying choose your bosses or choose your projects or choose the most chance of success. It means you like go and pick the cherry pick and see which one is the best to give you a chance of promotion. But I think at the end of it all, if you were to apply yourself, it means you try and figure out what's this piece of work going to be in respect to the whole system of things, right? How does this move the agenda? What is your boss interested in doing? How is your supervisor going to use this piece of information? If you start to see from the perspective, right, this piece of work will not be a piece of work, just a piece of project for you anymore, because it also becomes a chance for you to apply yourself and grow, right? Because you see from the supervisor's perspective, you see from the boss's perspective, and maybe you even had the opportunity of working on something that the CMB himself wants to do, or the head of department of a different discipline wants to do. Then you start to see other perspectives, and that's when you start to grow, right? And
I
then
mean,
only
it seems like there's going to be more work for someone who is thinking of progression in that sense. I mean, I would assume progression now means you want to move up to a different level, therefore assuming different responsibilities. So if someone wants to go up there, there is more work that has to be done, and that also means that less leisure time.
of course.
So
but
I mean,
you can-
are we then
it's
saying that for a pharmacist to be able to move up to the next level, there has to be a sacrifice on work-life balance?
No, absolutely
Really?
not. You don't
Really?
you don't have to keep thinking about your own time to be built into this thing, because if it's an official piece of work, you have the right to expect that they give you some time to do it. But
Is
your
that what's
speed
happening
of
on the
doing-
ground?
Yes, it is. It's always happening on the ground. Like if you are expected to do a particular work, right, we will usually give that kind of admin time to our people to carry out their work. Otherwise, it's not fair to expect it from you, right? It cannot be always CCA all the time. So it really is about how you manage your time. And there's something to be said about someone being efficient or not efficient. I mean, a piece of work given to five people may take different amounts of time to do them. So it's almost impossible to predict how much time you're going to need, right? Because there's no such thing as a norm. Like a project, how would I size it up according to the number of hours that I'm going to need? I don't even know your capabilities anyway. But it's just about showing your progress and how you dealt with that time wisely that actually makes that difference.
Jasmine, what do you think?
Yeah.
Sacrifice work-life balance for career progression?
I actually share the same sentiment as Doreen, because of course when you're given a new task, there is a steep learning curve. And because of that, there is an initial sacrifice of work-life balance. But then you need to consider once you've learned to cope with it, once you learn to cope with the new duties, then your work-life balance should not be impacted. If your work-life balance is impacted, it means that you really can't handle this piece of work within your job scope. And if that's the case, you're not ready. And you have to recognize that you're not ready. If you're ready, you would learn quickly. You have to sacrifice a few weeks, a few months, but then once you picked it up, it's something that comes naturally to you. So it's a matter of initially you need to sacrifice, but understanding that if you sacrifice and you can now do it, you have achieved something, you have learned something.
Do you think bosses are ready to handle a person who tries but wasn't able? I mean, they realized that they couldn't cope. Do you think that within the pharmacy side, or in society, we have people who are forgiving of such an attempt? Because to me, I see as incredible. It's good. I don't mind if you don't make it, but I value the attempt.
Yeah, but I think it's a matter of whether or not you have a conversation with your boss as well.
It's true.
I think if you talk to your boss about it and you tell your boss, actually for this aspect is really new to me. I probably need a bit more guidance in this area. Can you guide me? And then you learn from it. And it's having that continued conversation that's actually very important. And it's scary. I always, even in my new job, I had working from home was terrible because I learned going up to people, asking people how to do things. And then now I have to work from home, work virtually. I book people's time on their calendar and then talk to them. It feels very formal. It's not something that is very easy for me. And that was something that I voiced out to my boss. And I said this whole work from home situation is not fantastic for me because that's not how I learn. But I'm telling you that I'm still very keen to learn and I'm doing the best that I can to learn. And I don't think if you have this conversation with your boss going to say, then you lousy I don't want to hire you. I don't think they would say that. I think it's the kind of negative perception that we have about the bosses. But I think it's something that you need to talk to your bosses about. But I can understand the initiating the conversation is not easy. It took me 24 hours, or actually more than 24, 36 hours of preparation, because I was talking to my colleague about it. He said, why didn't you talk to boss about it? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm scared. And then it took me a while, schedule a time with him. And throughout that time, I was thinking, what if I say the wrong thing? What if he thinks differently? But the thing is that you want to work with a boss that you can work with. If that boss is going to slide you just because you just because you said that you needed a longer time to learn and you needed like a bit more guidance, then honestly, that's not the boss you should be working for, because that person doesn't suit your working style.
That's right.
So you need to also work for someone that you can work with and work for. Yeah.
No, Doreen, the Tatming says if your boss gives you something to do, they also want you to succeed.
Hi, Taming. well, I think being boss before, I probably could weigh in a little bit about your question whether we are ready to accept failures. I think we always are. And actually, I think our site is famous for extending pre-regis, like, those overseas pre-regis for 6 months, and then they cannot make it after 6 months, we extend it to 9 months, and then extend it 12 months. Yeah, it's tremendously fast. I'll tell you that. I think that sometimes there needs to be a clear where you cannot go line drawn, right? And I'll give you an example, right? We've had pre-regis who came in and had a tremendously bad attitude, right? And it's not about the fact that they just cannot make it or cannot, maybe just too slow to pick up concepts. Okay, those types we can maybe give you a bit more time just so that you can get your license. Then after we tell you, okay, maybe hospital not for you, you go and look for another place. You can use a license more safely, But there are people who, like, you tell them they make med safety errors, then they just like, okay, whatever, it's the doctor's fault. That sort of attitude, right? Then that kind you will just cut them. So it really is, it's you, it's really your attitude and how you approach life, right? And Jasmine is absolutely right. If your boss gave you something and I expect you to just go like 自生自灭 by yourself, you better say goodbye to the boss. Really. Then the boss really cannot work for one. Yeah. And it's also about really sometimes asking yourself whether planting yourself in the environment, right? Is this really, you have the skill sets to make this happen? And whatever the boss needs to be achieved, right? Do you have what it takes? Maybe not all of it now, but is this something that you think you can work towards and work hard towards getting there, right? If it's not right, then okay maybe it's time to say goodbye and move on. And I think that means absolutely right? If they give you something to do, it's something that they need to be done. Then they also won't want you to just like die by yourself, right? They want to make sure that you can do it just so that they can also deliver what they're supposed to do for whatever they have to deliver. Because you are now their hands and their feet.
Yeah.
Right or not? You mean your hand, sorry, you're not strong enough. I cut you off, I changed my hand. I cannot what?
Yeah.
Right?
And also if they don't do,
a lot of people,
you end up having to do for them.
Yeah,
a lot of people misunderstand our role when we assign tasks, because sometimes it's my view of delegation. When I assign a task to a team member, if they work hard on it and they do well, actually almost all the credit goes to them. But they don't realize that if they mess up, because it is my project, my neck is on the line. I take responsibility when things don't go well.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone, we are 1 hour into the chat show. We have one more topic to discuss. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, just feel free to put it in the chat. We see all the comments that you have. And before the end of the session, we will talk about it. All right.
Raymond, your boss is also Tatming's boss, right? You have the same boss. Cartoon character.
all the bosses now online. Okay. All right. So I have this one comment that I saw. And okay, by the way, for everyone, if you're curious about all these comments, so for the past 2 days, when we were thinking about having a session like this, we went out to a lot of our pharmacy friends, a lot of the WhatsApp groups, and we were asking, what are some things that people say? What are some things that you hear? And we received so many statements that it was impossible to do it in one session. So we split it into 2 sessions. But one thing that that kind of triggered me a little bit is this statement. And it says this: studying NUS pharmacy and the pharmacy community and PSS, which is the Pharmaceutical Society of Singapore, they've done absolutely nothing to elevate my life or fulfill my life aspirations.
Ouch.
Okay, when I say I'm triggered, it's because I have a particular point of view. Both of you can differ in your views. All right. So when I look at this question, right? So I think of the mission of the various societies, right? So if you say that NUS Pharmacy has done absolutely nothing to elevate your life, then I look at the Pharmaceutical Society and I look at NUS Pharmacy as a department. So NUSPS, the Student Society, says their mission is to improve students' lives in the professional sense, academically, and leisurely. If we think of the professionals, which are people like us who are, we've gone through pre-reg, we've gotten our license, the mission of the Pharmaceutical Society of Singapore, PSS, is to maximize the contribution of pharmacists to the healthcare of Singaporeans. If someone says that studying NUS Pharmacy and the pharmacy community and PSS has done absolutely nothing to elevate my life or fulfill my life aspirations, are we saying that the pharmacy department has failed and the student society has failed, or even the professional society has failed in their duty? What do you think?
Jasmine, you
Doreen?
start.
Jasmine, you want to start?
Yeah. So I also want to pose this question. Do you think Singapore Medical Association does a lot for their doctors, helps to live their aspirations?
No. Let's not go down that road. Yeah.
No. I'm just trying to show a point of view of professional associations in general are not intended to do that. Professional associations in general are intended to be a conduit, like if between experienced professionals as well as the younger ones.
What's
if
a conduit?
Like a connection, a channel.
Okay.
Just a platform where you can actually reach out to someone. And I feel that that's the same for PSS or for SPC. I feel like the intention really is to help people connect. And for me, I never thought about using PSS to live my life aspirations because I honestly don't know what my life aspirations were. So when I first started out, it was like I go left, right, bang a bit here, hit a bit there, make a bit of errors. But it was part of learning, right? And it is only through my experience that now I don't mind going back to PSS and share. I don't mind people coming up to me and asking questions about why I made certain career paths. And it was never ideal. It's not like I planned my life, moment I entered pharmacy, I'm going to go to MOH and go into regulatory. It was never that, And it's a platform where I believe it's a place to share your experience. And I don't believe that if you want to talk to someone, who is experienced and you have some questions, I don't think you reach out to them to say, no, I don't want to talk to you. No pharmacist is going to be like that. But then I always ask, have you asked? I think a lot of pharmacists say that I just don't ask because I don't think like people will listen or the person will connect with me. Who am I to that person for that person to want to talk to me? And I think the most basic thing to do is just go and ask. If you want to know more, just go and ask. And
so you think pharmacists are afraid of asking for help?
Yeah, I think asking for help, it's one of the things that I really think you should just ask for help. There's no need to be paiseh, Especially when you're young, it's the best time to ask because they can say, I'm new, right? And I can make errors. If you ask when you're much later on, then that's really a problem, if you don't even understand the fundamentals, right? So I just think that if you ask, no one's just going to say like, I don't want to talk to you. And you don't have to. And I think like, Sean, you also had a story about Sherifu Taksin, right? And then, it's about, and really, when people reach out to you, do you say like, no, I have no time to talk to you? Maybe you don't have time right now, but I'll make time for you. If I didn't reply you, really, I forgot. Like, it's not I purposely don't want to talk to you. Right? I think if people are afraid to ask, I think one thing you can do is just Facebook message a person, Instagram message a person, or like, ask a friend, hey, you are very close to that person, right? But I want to talk to a person, can you help me? I think it's just very simple questions like that. Yeah.
I think it's pretty interesting in the sense that because in the last couple of weeks, I've had a number of new and potentially their pre-reg, I think it's starting in a week or something like that. They've connected with me on LinkedIn and asked me about my journey and asked me about my my experiences, why I chose to go on this path. And every single time, I've always offered a one-on-one conversation with the person. I've never rejected anybody who asks for an opinion or lessons that I've learned in my journey, etc. But that can only come from people who ask, right? If you don't ask, it will confirm be a no. But if you ask, what's the worst thing that can happen?
No.
People say no, lor. And when people say no, what's going to happen? Your life will move on.
Mm.
And just now Jasmine was talking about this experience about Mr. Wu Tak Sing. So some of you might know when I first started my work in doing this kind of teaching work that I do, one of the programs that we conducted required a learning journey for students because I wanted to give students the experience of what it's like behind the scenes in a healthcare setting. I was desperate because we could not find a hospital or a healthcare institution to host the students. And I knew Mr. Wu because I contributed in the Singapore Pharmacy Congress. And Mr. Wu, there was one year that Mr. Wu was the chairperson. So I was a bit worried because Mr. Wu is like, walao, so up there. And who am I? I'm just a pharmacist, and by that time, not full-time pharmacist even. But on a Sunday afternoon, when I was really desperate, I wrote an email to him. I said, Mr. Wu, I need a learning journey for my students. I'm wondering if there's anyone you can refer me to. That was 2:10 p.m. By 2:17 p.m., he replied to me and he linked me up with HR people who could help me. Yeah, 7 minutes. The first question that came to my mind is, what, these people don't need to stop working on a Sunday, also reply email. But at the end of the day, I realized that sometimes we are just too afraid to ask questions, and the community is there to support you. I haven't had anyone who outrightly rejected me before. Yeah. So, I mean, Doreen, what do you think? Do you think that the professional society is not doing enough to help some of our colleagues elevate their lives or fulfill their life or maybe their professional aspirations?
I think there's a role for everybody in this world. And I think it's important for us to explore how different societies and different groups exist and what their usual expectations of their roles are. And so I think when Jasmine first explored to say, hey, SMA, do you think they did certain things for the doctors? She's absolutely right? So I think the more important thing is to ask yourself, right, whether your expectation of these various groups are legit or are fair or not. Okay, so I am just going to go back to what Tak Ming has mentioned there, right? The NUS Pharmacy gave you the degree, and really that is their role. I don't think it's their role to elevate your role. Like, why do you expect them to elevate your role? That should be you doing your own elevation yourself, not NUS do for you. Because after that, I give you whatever you have as an NUS basic degree. You take that and you grow that, right? That's all in your court. PSS. What is PSS supposed to do? PSS is Pharmaceutical Society. Society do what? Organize activities for their members, make sure that there are enough opportunities for you to get CE points. In fact, of late, they have been lobbying for changes in policies and even legislations. The home delivery policy is written by them, right? Where do you think the smoking cessation thing came from, Also by them, So how can you say never elevate your role? Just not maybe for you per se, but as a profession. So I think you just need to really ask yourself, right, what really is the role of these people? And it's not entirely true that they have not done anything to elevate.
Do you think it's because of a lack of involvement in these associations? That's why people tend to make these statements?
For sure. I think it's through the years, when I was a young pharmacist, I also do like that. Like, why you never listen to me one? Why you do this thing? You don't think I'm important, man. It's kind of like how we used to think when we think that, now that we are called a pharmacist, we are so clever, we know our medicines better than the doctors. And therefore we must be expected that people must roll their red carpet when I come for the meeting. I think at the end of it all, right, you still need to be very clear about what role you play in respect to everybody else. So you're right in that when you're not exposed to the larger picture of things, right, you end up thinking that you are you have this expectation of what you should be fulfilling yourself and what other people should be treating you as. But I think at the end of it all, I always tell the young pharmacists this lah. Okay, you want to go for PharmD titles, whatever titles you want to do, be it what your PSEP, whatever SEP or all the SEP things, never mind all that. All names and alphabet soup, Okay. At the end of it all, right, suit you. Okay. If today you have gone for a PharmD degree, you come back with a doctor title in front of your name. You think people are going to roll red carpet for you, man? No, just because you're a doctor. No, I don't think that's going to happen. But the moment, even if you are a very young pharmacist, and if like Jasmine suggests you in the meeting, you say something that, nobody heard of before. Wow, they immediately will see you in a different light, right or not? So I think really it's just about asking yourself, what is it that you really want people to see you as? And then figure out how you can best contribute in whichever situations you're at. Rather than to say, how come they never give me? You should probably think about how I can start to give first, understand the environment first. Then within the environment, what is the gap that I can fill? Then you offer that. Because the moment you do that, right, people will never forget you already. Don't care you put A, B, C, D in front of your name or behind your name, never mind.
I think it's one of those things that we say even in NUS pharmacy as a student, and you think about people who are in the exco. I mean, you have people. You think about NUSPS as a student society, right? You don't realize how much work they are doing unless you have a friend who is in the exco or you yourself participate in the activities, and you start to see the kind of work that they are trying to do. You see it at a different level when you get involved. Like for me, I felt that my biggest contribution to the profession was in terms of organizing events. Maybe it's because of my experience in pharmacy, right? But when I took up the logistics role in the Singapore Pharmacy Congress, that's where I actually started to realize the scale of things, the amount of planning that you have to go through, and the amount of work that people are actually putting in, all because they do believe that there is a better future. Yeah. Whereas there are a lot of people who don't tend to see that, So, well, I mean, for everyone who has considered something like that, or you had this in your thoughts, maybe one of the things I would personally suggest is get involved. Try to do a project. Get involved in a project that PSS is doing. If you're a student, get involved in a project that the Pharmaceutical Society or the Student Society is doing. And give it your best, contribute, try to see the larger picture. At the end of the day, if it works out well, good for you, you learn a lot. If it doesn't work out well, you still learn a lot. Yeah, and your life will go on, right?
Yeah.
But it's easy to complain when you just don't do anything. Well, I'm of this perspective where it's natural to complain. As humans, we always like to complain. Now, if you have put in the effort, you tried your best to change things, not just about the society. Think about work, think about, your life. If you tried your best, you put in effort, you put all the suggestions to your boss, and your boss say no, or you tried everything and it didn't work out, fine. You have all the right to bitch and moan and complain. But if you haven't done anything, you have no right to complain. Right? So my suggestion would be to get involved, all right, and see where things are now. The truth is that it's not all nice and rosy. I'm not going to come here in front of everyone here who's watching to say that everything in pharmacy is good now, we are in the perfect position, and we should demand passion and pride and purpose, like what NUS calls it, for us to do our job. I don't think everything is perfect, but I do think that we can make things better. Yeah, and
I will quote Liak and Kui Tiang. We used to complain about things. Okay, I do remember Liak very candidly telling us. He will tell you things like, if you want to complain about the bosses and everyone else, right, then why don't you try doing their job?
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
You try doing their job. And in order for you to try and do their job, you first have to understand what they had to go through.
Yeah.
Right? So how better than to get into opportunities for you to be involved in those projects to try and take over your boss's job? You do that.
Yeah. Well, I think as long as we continue offering opportunities, as people who are in management roles now, if you continue offering opportunities and you continue supporting people and encouraging people to come, then hopefully our pharmacist talents, get to shine, get to come true, and hopefully they are guided in the correct way. So I just want to look at a few comments. So Justin says, he quoted JFK, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And he says, I think that we are responsible for how people see our profession. So we should ask ourselves what we can do and how we can make our profession greater. You want to see change? Sometimes you have to be the change or to make the change. Jasmine,
Not
what do you think?
sometimes, all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Jasmine, what do you think?
Yeah, I really think so if you want to be heard, then speak up. If you want something to move, then do something about it. You don't just stay behind the backdrop and then just complain about things. Why aren't things changing? Go and change it. I don't think nobody is going to slight you for the effort that you put in to change it. Maybe you may not be able to change it in this generation, maybe next generation of pharmacists and they can change it. But I think it's really a matter of you going to try. And and even when I quote the Singapore Pharmacy Congress, initially when I thought about it, being I was like, very difficult, man. Then after that, Sean asked me, you want to be MC or not? So I was like, okay, I'll be MC. I was like, oh my God, so many meetings. And then I see you do guide the new logistics head to do the different logistics stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much things to consider. The lighting, whether the lighting is dim. Then the Suntec one, when you hit, oh shit, the light doesn't dim. Or it dims all the way to dark, then that's a problem. These are things that we take for granted. And a lot of things that PSS does for us, it seems simple. It seems like it's just an event, right? It's so simple to do, right? But you have to really be part of it to realize actually what is the effort that's put in. And if you were part of it and you still think that, it's a very simple thing to do, then good for you. What else can we do what else can the society do for you? If you think they're not doing enough, then what do you think they should be doing? If you don't tell them what you want, it's very hard for us to think and imagine and read your mind and know what events you want. You have to say that. If you don't say that, I also don't really know what you want. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to allow Doreen to respond to one more comment before we conclude with final thoughts, okay? So Doreen, Tatming says, agree with Sean. So we did work together in a few pharmacy congress. A congress is a good snapshot of opportunities and current developments in the profession. So when we think about joining all these extra CCAs that are not within our main scope of work, as pharmacists, how do you think it is important that someone spends their time outside of work doing things like volunteering in pharmacy congress or PSS activities, or do you think that they should spend that time working extra hours to gain that experience in their current workplace?
Oh, you mean if you had to spend extra time anyway, should you spend it at work or outside?
Okay, so in another terms, should you OT at work or should you go outside and do all these things? Because, I mean, there are pros and cons of both, right?
Firstly, you shouldn't be OTing. If you're OTing, you better ask yourself whether you're productive or not.
You have no idea how many comments came in saying we keep on working OT. We cannot hear the patients. It's not what I say, it's what they say.
It might be the COVID period, when I understand, because there were a lot of extra processes.
I don't think it is just COVID.
But like I said, if you constantly have to OT at work, you really ought to be asking yourself what is wrong with this picture, because it shouldn't be the way. And again, I would advise go back to your bosses and talk with the bosses and see whether it's your problem not coping well or really that the work given to you is just too much. Okay, I prefer to take the story on volunteerism not related with your work, because I think that getting this CCA is part and parcel of your life. Okay, and I'll tell you that I value CCA very, very highly, because it's so highly that last time when we first hired pre-reggers, don't tell the pre-reggers, actually they are listening now. We used to we don't look at grades, we don't look at grades. I mean, of course it cannot be too cui grades lah, but the key thing is how much CCAs they've done.
Yeah.
Because really CCAs give you opportunities to expand yourself beyond your profession. And, constantly, regardless of whatever the three of us have said so far, right, a lot of it has been exposure outside. Because I think earlier we also said walking one big round, right, you actually bring other experiences coming back to the situation. And if about everything else, you go outside and you see how other people do things, right, you can learn their bad things, you can learn their good things, you kind of become a better person yourself. And the skill sets, come on, MC. When do you ever get a chance to MC in your hospital? Can I ask you? right? But what is MC to you? The fact that you have gone up to be more confident, the way that you present yourself, right? The next time you have to give a clinical broad presentation or you're going to give a presentation to a group of doctors, guess what is going to come in useful, right? The way that you present yourself, the way that you present your speech. I cannot understate the importance of doing CCAs. But please do not go overboard and then tomorrow go and join 3 societies, okay? Again, ask yourself what is it that you want to learn, right? If you particularly serve in your capacity in one particular community, what is it you're going to learn? And is this going to be something part and parcel towards what you're going to achieve at the end of your life? Like maybe Jasmine says, oh, I don't know what I want to do anyway. Then try lah. Try maybe, then next year try the same things, right? Try a new thing, learn a new skill. And then there you cannot say you don't progress really, because you progress in many, many ways.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so right now we are going to give each of you a minute just to share your final thoughts. And as you share your final thoughts about our topic, I mean, we addressed some things very directly today, very openly. And just bear in mind that whoever is listening to us right now, some of them could be students, some of them are going to enter pre-reg, some are young pharmacists, some are experienced pharmacists, some are bosses. So I think essentially we've got the whole spectrum, right? But throughout my 10 years and as a pharmacist, we've heard so many of these things being spoken about behind the scenes, right? So if there is one thought that you would like to leave your audience with, right, what would that be? Right, Jasmine, you go first.
I think that I have 2 key things. Firstly, take the initiative. I know being risk averse is what we are trained to be, but I think that we should give ourselves a space to take a risk. And the other one is speak up. I think there's so many good ideas in your brain. Take it out, put it in your mouth, and really just speak up. I think don't be scared to do so. And being young is the best time to do it. Yeah.
Doreen.
I think it was interesting that you talked about pride, passion, and purpose. And I don't think that we are supposed to be attacking pride, purpose, and passion separately. They should all coexist together in the triage. Because if you have passion without purpose, you'll be like chonging in all directions just because you feel like you want to do things, right? I mean, it's kind of like how it's all interlinked. Very importantly, guys, whether you're young or you're old, and I like being young, but then I'm actually quite old already. I think it's important to figure out your ikigai. Ikigai is Japanese for that purpose, right? And you really do need to be waking up every morning to ask yourself what you're existing to do, and whether what you're doing for this world, you're very calling for existence, right? Is this something that people can pay you for? Once you've found that center of the ikigai flower, I think you will be the most fulfilled person in this whole life, and you will never have to ask a single question of why there's no progression. You never need to be asking why I'm not paid enough. Because I think waking up and finding purpose to do something every day, living, I think satisfactorily, being fulfilled every day of your life is probably the best way to be living. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Doreen. Thank you, Jasmine, for coming on this Sunday. For everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. All these videos will eventually be posted on YouTube. And let me share with you why I want to do this. Even when I've done it for my past episodes, I've had people who emailed me telling me that they've learned something. So we are doing all of this right now because I've shared with both Jasmine and Doreen that if through all of this, someone gets an idea and helps them to lead a better career, this time and this effort would have been worth it. There's no money to be made from this interview, right? But thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I will see you next week at 3 p.m. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you. Bye.